In 323 BC, the most powerful man alive collapsed at a dinner party in Babylon. He was 32 years old. He had never lost a single battle. He controlled more land than any human being in history had ever controlled, from Greece to the edges of India. His soldiers worshipped him. His enemies feared him. Even the gods, some said, called him their own. And within 12 days, he was dead. But here's what nobody tells you. The moment Alexander the Great stopped breathing, the world he had built didn't just mourn him. What followed was one of the most brutal, blood-soaked power struggles in human history. A 40-year war between his own generals that erased millions of lives, shattered entire civilizations, and quietly rewired the entire ancient world. And almost none of it made it into your history class. Because the real dark secret of Alexander's empire isn't how he built it. It's what happened the moment he was gone.
I've spent years digging into the corners of history that textbooks skip over: the messy parts, the brutal parts, the parts that make you sit back and go, why did nobody ever tell me this? And this story, this might be the most overlooked catastrophe in all of ancient history. We're talking about the year 323 BC. The place, Babylon, a city of towering ziggurats, spice markets, and more political intrigue than anything Netflix has ever dreamed up. Alexander has just returned from the edge of the known world. His men are exhausted. His empire stretches across 3 million square miles, and he has left absolutely no clear plan for who takes over when he dies. Here's your "did you know" moment, and I want you to screenshot this because most people have no idea this is true. When Alexander's generals asked him on his deathbed who should inherit his empire, his reported answer was, and I'm not making this up, "to the strongest." 2 words, 3 million square miles, 30 million people, an army of battle-hardened veterans with war elephants and siege weapons. And the answer was, "to the strongest." What followed has a name. Historians call it the Wars of the Diadochi, Diadochi meaning successors in Greek. But that label is almost too clean, too academic for what it actually was. If this is the kind of history that makes you lean forward in your seat, hit subscribe. I drop one of these every week, stories that never made the textbook but absolutely should have. Now let's go back to Babylon, because the body isn't even cold yet. To understand what's about to happen, you have to understand who Alexander actually was, not the marble statue version, but the real one. He was charismatic to the point of being dangerous. He genuinely believed, that he was the son of a god. He drank heavily. He made impulsive decisions that brilliant generals called reckless, and then watched him somehow pull off anyway. He once burned an entire city to the ground, reportedly, because a woman dared him to at a party. He was brilliant, he was terrifying, and he was, above all else, irreplaceable. His generals knew this, every single one of them. There were men like Ptolemy, sharp, calculating, the kind of man who never acted without knowing exactly what he'd gain. He had been Alexander's friend since childhood, but friendship in the ancient world only went so far. There was Perdiccas, Alexander's second-in-command, the man holding the royal signet ring when Alexander died, the man who thought that made him king. It did not make him king. There was Antigonus, a one-eyed general so physically enormous and so militarily ruthless that soldiers on the other side of the battlefield would reportedly lose confidence just seeing him approach. And there was Eumenes, a Greek secretary, not even a Macedonian, who somehow ended up as one of the most gifted military commanders of the entire era, and who everyone looked down on right up until he started defeating them. These were not cartoon villains. These were men who had walked through deserts together, crossed the Hindu Kush mountains in winter, watched their friends die in India. They had built this empire with their own hands. And now, with Alexander gone, every single one of them believed, at least privately, that they deserved to lead it. Here's the detail that never makes it into documentaries. In the first hours after Alexander's death, his Macedonian infantry and his cavalry literally split into two armed factions inside the palace, both backing different successors, both ready to fight each other in the hallways of Babylon. It almost started a civil war before the body was buried. A compromise was reached barely. Alexander's unborn child and his half-brother, a man named Philip or Hideous who had a severe intellectual disability, would be declared co-kings. The generals would rule as regents. For about 5 minutes, that plan held. And then everything fell apart. It took less than 2 years. Perdiccas, the man holding Alexander's ring, the man who believed he was the rightful regent of the empire, made one fatal mistake. He tried to marry into royalty to legitimize his power. The other generals saw it for exactly what it was, a grab. Ptolemy, already in Egypt and building something of his own, did something almost unthinkably bold. He stole Alexander's body. Alexander's funeral procession, a golden carriage, months in the making, built to carry the most famous corpse in the world from Babylon back to Macedonia, was hijacked mid-route. Ptolemy redirected it to Egypt, to Alexandria, the city Alexander himself had founded and never lived to see completed. The symbolism was not subtle. Whoever controlled Alexander's body controlled Alexander's legacy. Ptolemy understood that in the ancient world. Perdiccas marched his army into Egypt to take it back. He never came home. His own officers, fed up with a disastrous river-crossing attempt that got hundreds of men drowned or eaten by crocodiles, assassinated him in his tent. What followed was 2 decades of war so complex that historians still argue about the timeline. Alliances formed and broke within single seasons. Men who swore brotherhood on the graves of shared comrades marched armies against each other the following spring. Entire cities changed hands 3, 4, 5 times. Populations were enslaved. Farmland burned. Trade routes collapsed. But here's where the story gets darker, and almost no one talks about this part. The ones who suffered most weren't the generals. The ordinary people living inside this empire, the Egyptians, the Persians, the Babylonians, the Greeks who had been promised peace and prosperity under Alexander's grand unified vision. They became pawns. Their cities became bargaining chips. Their sons became soldiers in wars they had no stake in. During this period, the city of Babylon, one of the oldest and most magnificent cities in human history, a city that had stood for over 1,000 years, began its final decline. The endless military campaigns drained its resources, disrupted its trade, and scattered its population. Within 2 centuries, it was essentially abandoned. The wars of the Diadochi didn't just break Alexander's empire. They helped kill one of humanity's greatest cities. After Upsas, the carving was complete. Ptolemy kept Egypt and built a dynasty that would last nearly 300 years, ending only when Cleopatra died and Rome absorbed the last remnant. Seleucus took the vast eastern territories, Persia, Mesopotamia, parts of India, and created a kingdom so enormous it was almost impossible to govern, and so it slowly crumbled. Crescent controlled Macedonia and Greece, but his line died out within a generation. And the ordinary world, the world that Alexander had promised would be united, that would blend East and West Greek and Persian conqueror, and conquered into something entirely new. It never became what he dreamed. And here is the twist that most people completely miss. Emphasis, it also never went back to what it was. Greek language, Greek art, Greek philosophy, they spread across every one of these successor kingdoms. Persian and Egyptian and Babylonian ideas flowed back westward. A new hybrid culture emerged across the ancient world. Historians call it the Hellenistic Age. The man died, the idea survived. And here is the darkest truth of all the secret buried under centuries of hero worship and marble busts. Alexander's empire may never have been sustainable. Not even if he had lived, not even if he had named an heir. The whole structure rested on one man's impossible personality, one man's ability to inspire, terrify, and hold together people who had nothing else in common. The moment he was gone, it was always going to burn.